Welcome back, City Builders. Kodiak the Kodiak here. Recently, Ubisoft presented myself as well as a bunch of other creators with the opportunity to play the new Anno game, Anno 11.7 Pax Romana. So in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down 7 different things about the new game that I really liked and are things to keep an eye on as we get closer to this game eventually coming out. Now, full disclosure, I was not paid to make this video, nor have I been given a full access key to this game. We were just given a brief window to actually play the game early. And once our time was up, we were done. So my knowledge of the game only goes as far as I was able to actually play in the game. So some content creators may have seen things that I didn't see, and I may have noticed things that other content creators didn't see as well. So make sure you guys go check out some other wonderful content creators who have videos coming out for Anno. I know City Planner Plays has a video coming out soon, as well as Zardis. I'll leave a link to both of their channels down in the description. Now, before we get started, I'll also have another video coming out later in the week that will be a full play of my time playing the game. It'll be lightly edited to remove some things that aren't necessarily good for watching, and it'll have a voiceover of me talking about my experience like a commentary you would see on a movie. I didn't record a voiceover while we were playing because I wanted to try to get as far as I possibly could so I can see as much of the game as possible. And after watching it back, I think I have a lot more insight now as well. So before we get started, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and do not forget to turn on notifications so you can keep up to date when that video comes out. I'm shooting for Friday, but we might have it a little earlier than that. Now, without further ado, let's dive into the list. Now, since there's actually no real footage of Anno until all of our videos go live really out on the internet, so I have a suspicion that we'll have some new viewers coming into the channel. So you guys are aware, this is a City Skylines primarily focused channel. So a lot of my knowledge and information about city builders heavily relies on my knowledge and information about City Skylines. So you may see some comparisons, or I may make some comparisons to City Skylines throughout this video. However, I did play Anno 1800 and I quite liked that game as well. And I'm not oblivious to other city builders, so this should be a good general list of things to look out for in the game. I also don't want anybody to think that this video is an endorsement of the game and I'm like, yes, you should pre-order this game and you should buy it. What we played was a really well-polished demo, and I have no idea when that build was from. It could be from December for all I know. I will say the demo was really polished and it felt like everything was put together pretty well. But on top of that, we also don't have a release date for this game, and so while you can add it to your wish list over on Steam, I saw far too little of this game, and we're still probably maybe too far from release. I still don't know the release date as of recording this video to say, yes, my experience with this game is worth purchasing it. But there's a lot of really great things to look forward to in this game, and let's start with number 1, the visuals. I hope you guys have already gotten a taste of that throughout the intro of this video, but this game is stunning. Now, for context, when we did our test demo, we were playing on a remote PC. So we were playing remotely from wherever server region they wanted us playing from. And I don't know the exact specifics of the specs on the PC they had us playing on. I think it was probably a 4080, and I know for a fact we were playing on 1080p. Now, I still game at 1080p because recording for content and streaming on Twitch. Higher resolutions are not really that viable right now, so I still do everything at 1080p. So for me, in my experience, I thought it was great. Even with the slight encoding squares being transmitted to my screen, I thought the game looked gorgeous, and looking at the footage that they gave us, because they recorded all the footage for us locally, the game just looks great. I can't begin to explain to you how beautiful this game looks, and as you're playing the game, the way the environment reacts to you building is just absolutely stunning. On top of that, the game features an optional day-night cycle. I found this feature quite fun, and while I probably will do most of my gameplay probably during the day, during probably sunset or sunrise, depending on where my island's situated so I can have good lighting, when I wanted to feel immersed in my island and take some cool pictures or video clips, I did find myself using the day-night cycle. I think it's a really nice immersive touch, and I'm glad that they added it to the game. The final thing in the visual category that I really wanted to focus on was how the actual, housing works with itself. And you might be a little bit confused on what I mean by that, but as I built out the blocks, you'll see here that the buildings adapt to actually make cohesive blocks. And I'll put on screen here how they actually look in the 3rd tier of citizens in your city. So as you level up your people, the 3rd tier buildings actually have alleyways and streets that cohesively work and fit together. So the game's doing something in its AI to actually properly calculate this is a block and this is how the building should be built, and creates such a beautiful looking city as a result. The visuals are great, and it really helps with the immersion and makes me feel passionate and compelled to keep playing and take care of my city. Kind of adjacent to the visuals is the UI, and I think the UI is really clean so far. Now, again, I don't know how old the build of this game is. I don't know when the game's going to come out. And one of the things that you should know as a gamer, if you've ever played an early access to a game or a demo and then played it at launch, you'll probably know that UI and optimization really get a lot of reworks before launch. They're kind of the last two things that really get finalized and polished towards the tail end of development, especially optimization. So I don't know how much of the actual UI will change before launch, but what I will say is I really like the new wheel in the bottom left. Rather than having in Anno 1800 the stop time and everything kind of up in the top right, I like having it down in the bottom. I like just kind of having everything down there. It makes it feel easier to click around if I'm not using the hotkeys, less movement in the mouse cursor. I know some people who are listening to this might think that's like a really niche thing, or like, what the heck, you can't move your arm a couple feet. But when you're moving your mouse so much in a game like this, having a really nice UI and something that is easy to click to is really important. And you might just say, just use the keybinds, but not everybody does that. So having a good UI is really nice. And I really like this one. I like the wheel. It explains everything. It shows you your resources. It has the time over there. You can switch between the day-night mode and the map mode, which took me way too long to figure out because I could not find my mini-map for the longest time when I was playing this demo. But you can switch between the two, which is nice. So it just kind of all takes over the wheel. It's the almighty wheel UI down in the corner, and I quite like that. And the rest of the UI is just very clean. I like the bluish gray color. All of the elements are available for you on screen. When you highlight over things, it gives you all the data and information that you need. I quite like the UI. I have no complaints with it thus far. A really nice UI addition that they've added to the game is the quests up in the top left. So this game does feature quests from your citizens, and you need to click up in the top left in order to see which ones that you've missed or you need to interact with. So your citizens will come up to you with questions like, we need to go somewhere, or you walk past somebody and they have a bunch of lumber and you're like, met with options. Should I buy this person's lumber and make my citizens happy? And yes, I did in the demo. I was like, sure, why not? It made it easy to go and click on them, and because they're not flashing, it doesn't really feel like, okay, if I'm busy doing something else, I can take the time to stop and actually finish what I'm doing before tackling the quest. It doesn't feel too urgent, but I know that it's there. Now, I don't necessarily know that this deserves its own category, which is why it's 7, but I'm going to throw this into the UI because obviously the play pause buttons and things like that are included in the UI, but this is more of a gameplay feature. You can build while paused in the demo, at least. I don't know if this is going to be a full feature inside of the game, but oh my goodness. I think one of the most frustrating elements for me playing Anno 1800 was not being able to pause the game and move and make changes to my island. I'm sure some more hardcore players like that element of the game because it does feel a little bit more realistic. Like, you know, time doesn't stop while you're constructing and doing things. But one of the really nice things about Anno is it allows you to just pick up buildings and kind of move them around wherever you want. You don't like where you place something, pick it up and move it. Doesn't cost anything. It's just a nice little quality of life feature that helps you manage your islands better because there is a lot of min-maxing that can happen in Anno in the later parts of the game. However, when your supply chains become really tight, if you are moving things around while the gameplay is going, you can create a whole supply chain collapse because, you know, your citizens are kind of based on the resources that they have. So if they start losing a resource, your population starts to go down and then everything begins to implode in on itself. So being able to move all this stuff while the game is paused and then let the simulation run is really, really, really nice. I know there is a lot of people, especially in the City Skylines community, that hate when people play while the game is paused, but I think in a game like Anno where you are moving things around and with supply chains and things like that, it is a very nice quality of life feature for someone like myself who doesn't really necessarily want all that kind of stress. And you can by all means still play the game while it's running. There's nothing forcing you from pausing the game and making changes. But for someone like me in my situation, I like that that's been added and it is just so refreshing and actually makes me want to play the game. I don't feel as stressed and anxiety induced while playing this compared to Anno 1800. I can take a break, I can look at my city, I can detail, I can add cute little parks like you'll see me doing on screen right now. I add a couple little plazas and courtyards through detailing. Some of our City Skylines viewers might really appreciate that, and I am just really appreciative that they added building while pausing. And while we're on the topic, all the core Anno like features that you're thinking of, like moving buildings, blueprint mode, things like that are all still in this game. Next up is going to be one of the biggest new gameplay features added in this game, and that is the research tree. So if you played Anno 1800, for example, if you were going to, let's say, upgrade your warehouse. Now, normally you would have like 2 or 3 slots available for people to load things into your warehouse. Just a core element of how Anno works with supply chain management. If you were to upgrade that, you would need a certain amount of resources. And when you make that upgrade, you're going to need a new resource. So you might only need lumber for the first upgrade, but then after you make that first upgrade, you'll need steel for the next upgrade. And there's no other unlock. You just need that new resource, and once you have that new resource, you can upgrade the building. However, in Pax Romana, you'll have the new research tree. Now, it creates 3 categories, so in order to upgrade to different features, you will have to research them. We only had limited access to the research tree, and I do expect a lot of this to change. But, for example, if we wanted to add a new slot available for our warehouses, and we wanted that ability to actually add that upgrade, we would have to research the warehouse upgrade in order to get that extra slot. There is a lot of other things in the research tree, like improving efficiencies and completely overhauling your supply chains as a result. You do have to build a library in order to unlock the research mechanic, and it functions a lot like Civilization, where you're slowly building up points, and once your points are fulfilled, it will finish the research of that tech, and then you have to select a new one. This can add a lot of depth and variety, and one of the biggest things about this new Anno is the variety and flexibility that is actually included in the gameplay of this. I felt like Anno 1800 was a lot more linear. You needed X resource in order to upgrade. And on the next thing on the docket here, the citizens' needs for level, that is feature number 4 that has completely changed that I really like. You don't actually need every single resource. So in Anno 1800, you will actually need every single resource in order to level up. So in order to actually upgrade your citizens' housing, you will need to fulfill X amount of resource needs. However, in Anno 11.7, needs are broken up into categories. So for example, you'll have a fashion category, a food category, a housing category, a household need category. And those categories may require, let's say, 4 resources in order to fill up the need for that category. However, the game may give you 8 options in order to fill that category, so you only need whatever number of resources to fill that category that it requires. So you don't actually need every single resource in order to level up your citizens, which is really nice if you are on an island that maybe doesn't have something specific that you're looking for. You can flex to something else, allowing your empire to be a bit more flexible and kind of forego certain resources until later, or through trade if you really want to at some point, in order to diversify your resources. Now, as far as I can tell, each time you level up, it adds a category. So the first category it adds is the household need, which will give your citizens needs of things like furniture, for example. Also, each resource you provide them does something different. So for example, one of the first needs that you'll kind of unlock resource production chains for is fashion. And you'll have the option between producing tunics or hats. I don't know how to pronounce the hat, so it starts with a P. However, each item gives the citizens different attributes who have that item in their household. So for example, the tunics provide +2 tax income for your island, whereas the hat provides 1 tax income and 1 happiness for each household that has one on your island. Another example of this is the food production chain. So you have the sardines and the porridge. The porridge adds 2 population to the household. So if you make porridge for your citizens and they have that as a resource inside the household, it will add 2 people to that household. In previous Anno games, you would just get a resource and then the household would grow, and that would just be kind of it. However, in this game, you have other options. So for example, the sardines will add +1 household and +1 taxable income. So instead of adding 2 citizens to the household for porridge, you can choose to go with sardines, which will add 1 household population and 1 taxable currency. Now, I believe in order to fully fulfill the food chain, you need both of these resources for your citizens. So they will need both porridge and sardines. So you'll actually get 3 + 1 gold for completing the entirety of the food need. But as you get later on, you'll have the ability to flex and maybe not go with something because you don't have access to it, or maybe the attributes that are applied to a specific resource are really beneficial for your island, and you choose to trade in for that resource because it's significantly more beneficial for you. This flexibility is an absolute game changer, and I really like the direction that they're going with it. Then obviously once you fulfill the needs, you can upgrade to the next class. The next cool gameplay feature that's added on the list here is religion. Now they have added a religion mechanic and you are worshiping very specific gods. So it's not a monotheistic type of situation where they're worshiping a Christian god. They're still worshiping the Roman gods or even some of the more indigenous gods as well. So religion is also island specific. So if you wanted a more agrarian island like I did, you would probably want to hail to the Pantheon of Ceres. Now, the way religion works in this game is potentially a little different than you maybe are expecting. So you set your patron, and then as you develop belief and devotion, you'll begin to move the line at the bottom of the screen towards the right. Now, in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see the actual buffs that worshiping this god or goddess will present for you. So for example, Ceres Augusta, which is the primary attribute, so the top is primary and the bottom is secondary. Primary attribute increases the production of a bunch of different supply chains. Now, I don't know if it's the actual end resource that is shown or if it is every single resource in the chain, but each time you hit that, you will add a percentage to the production of said resource. And if you hit the secondary resource, that is, so for example, for Ceres, it has all residents provide additional population. So even without adding, let's say, the bread over the sardines, you would have more population. Now, full transparency, I didn't get very far into the religion system. I don't know how much was actually available in the demo, and I kind of just pushed it a bit to the side when I was actually playing as a way to try to get further and further inside of the demo and see more cool stuff. But I know every single time you hit one of these checkpoints on the religion path, you unlock an additional shrine. I'm assuming shrines are buildings you can build along the island, but again, I don't know. Maybe another person in a different video series might know about it, which is why I'm again encouraging you to go watch other creators' videos on this game. Now, in the demo, we only had access to Mars, Ceres, and Neptune. However, there were 3 more locked behind research trees. I'm not sure if we could just research these guys or if we actually had to go to the New World portion of the game in order to actually get them, because they did seem like they fit the vibe of the New World gods and goddesses, but I guess that's something that I'll figure out eventually later on when the game is closer to launch. Now, there's also a global buff system. I don't know if that just affects your civilization or if it affects other civilizations as well, just for like the Empire worshiping all of these pantheons. But let's say you have 2 islands worshiping Neptune and 1 island worshiping Ceres, and they both hit a certain point on their worship track, they can produce global buffs. Again, I did not get to this part of the game, so I'm just letting you know that it's there. I'm curious to see how it gets built out though. I still think it's really cool that the game is allowing a lot of flexibility, and I hope that by the time you reach endgame, you actually don't unlock everything, so you can actually take advantage of the customizability of the Empire and not just actually having everything unlocked by the end game, oh boy, and then it's just like, okay, well, why was all this variety really added to the game if you still needed to unlock everything? Next up is a bit of a smaller thing, and that's the resource nodes. So the resource nodes in this game are maybe a little different than previous Annos. So before in Anno 1800, let's say, you would go to a resource node like, let's say, iron or coal, where they're a resource specific node. However, in Anno 11.7, they have these generic water nodes, and there's a bunch of them along the rivers here. You can place any water resource you want on these nodes. So if you want clay on one of these nodes, boom, just build a clay mine on that. If you want to do a grain mill instead, boom, you can put the grain mill there. I really appreciate the flexibility there, that it's not just a set resource in a set spot, boom, there you go. It again really focuses in on the flexibility mechanic that I keep harping in on. I really hope that this game allows for deep flexibility like I keep thinking that it does after playing the demo. That tied in with some of the immersion features from the visuals part of the game really makes me feel like I will be tied deeply to my islands and be able to specify which one does what and exactly how they do it. Now, finally, many of you might not see this as a big, cool thing, but as somebody who, again, comes from City Skylines, but has played previous Annos, you'll know that the roads in Anno are very linear. It is based off of a grid on the whole island, and you can't really deviate from that grid. However, in Anno 11.7, you can build diagonally. And again, it seems like a small feature, and space-wise, it is kind of a waste of space. This to me is absolutely game-changing, and I loved it. The first thing I did when I built my little town was I put a diagonal road in. I'm like, all right, cool. I can add some diversity to my city. And the cool thing is when you go to the edge of the maps, you'll see that there are certain area boundaries that are actually on a diagonal. So you will need to adjust how you build in order to properly utilize all the space and maybe even access some of the resources as they may be on a diagonal as well. This further kind of dives into this immersiveness that I keep bringing back up. Real cities are not perfect grids unless you're talking about newer developed cities around the world. They're very organic. They have breaks in the grids. Those odd gaps can allow you to build parks, build decorative centers that help make your city feel more alive and helps immerse you and feel more connected to what you're building in the game. This feature in and of itself may seem small to a lot of you, but to me, it's a big deal. Now, it's not just the diagonal roads that are different. There are some quality of life upgrades to the roads as well. I never got to upgrading the roads, so I'm not really too sure what an upgraded road really works like inside of this game compared to previous Anno titles. That being said, there is a really sick feature and quality of life improvement for the roads that I want to touch on before we get out of here. That as long as you have the road selected, you can click on a building and it will automatically fully surround the building. So when you're building something like a trade market or a warehouse where you want all sides to have access to the roads and kind of build out from there, you can just click on the building with the road and you don't need to actually just drag your cursor around. It's a small quality of life improvement, but I really like that small quality of life improvement. So these are the 7 best new features that I really think are going to push this Anno to the forefront of the series as a whole. Now, if you're curious about what features are still in the game from previous Anno, or maybe even some criticism that I might have about the current build of the game, which I'm willing to be very lenient on since the game is still actively in development and we don't have a release date for, you guys can take a look at my long play commentary video coming out later in the week. So make sure you have notifications turned on to keep up to date on that one. Otherwise, I again encourage you guys to go take a look at other creators' videos and see what they saw that I missed. That long play video I have will also talk about things that weren't necessarily worthy of getting a number, but are still really interesting topics that deserve to be talked about, like the aqueduct system in the game. Anyways, I'll let you guys get on with your day. This has been Kodiak Cities, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Deuces.